I know you've worked very closely with Senator Sanders, and I can imagine, the shock to hear that he wasn't endorsing your run for presidential office. And I saw you had an interview with CNN and many other outlets about that. And you'd said that you thought he was making a plausible argument, but deep down in his heart, he knows that the Democratic Party doesn't have any fundamental intention of speaking to the needs of poor people and working people. And I was wondering if you could just elaborate a bit on that, what you see as fruitful efforts and change to benefit the poor and working class people of America.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that question very much. So, well, one is, Brother Bernie is my dear brother. He'll always be my dear brother, whether he's right, whether he's wrong, lukewarm, strong, or whatever. Uh, and two, I would never really have any expectations of him endorsing me. I was much more disappointed in him endorsing Biden because that's the only. It's not as if he doesn't support Biden that he can't support somebody else or leave the slot empty. But it was the quick endorsement of Biden. I thought he probably could have got much more leverage because Bernie has a deep, deep commitment that's genuine in terms of supporting poor and working people. And that's what brings me together with him and him together with me. And I thought that he could have put more pressure on Biden. But then I felt that he and some of the others, when they started talking about Biden doing such a good job with the economy being so strong, and when I said, I can't go with that kind of mendacity. So the statistics may look good, but I just, last couple of weeks ago, I was at Skid Row with Brother Pastor Q and the others, 41,000 homeless people in Los Angeles. You got numbers in San Francisco that come close. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So the statistics may look good, but the levels of grotesque wealth inequality, the 62% who live paycheck to paycheck, 62% of my fellow citizens live paycheck, that doesn't mean the economy to me is that strong. What criteria do you have for what strength means when you talk about the economy? So that was something that I was critical of. And then, of course, with the Gaza thing, we refused to come out for ceasefires. I just thought that was just downright pathetic. And I can say that and still love my brother. But in the face of that kind of massive massacre and ethnic cleansing and genocidal assault, and you can't come out for a ceasefire. You're too tied to Biden again. I mean, it's just pathetic at that point. So that's what I really meant. But what I'm concerned about is making the connection between foreign policy and domestic policy. You see, I come out of a legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. and others that see the need for the abolition of poverty, the abolition of homelessness and unhousedness, that calls for strong support of trade unions, especially the militant wing of trade unions that pushing greedy bosses against the wall to give them benefits and fair treatment. Bernie would agree with that very much so, and I love that about him. But it's also tied to the military industrial complex and the Pentagon budget, 57 cents for every dollar going to the military. You see, you can't continually vote for military expansion and then be upset when you have austerity vis-a-vis schools. You can't cancel the student loans. Healthcare can't be free. Housing, market-driven, pushing working people out. Where's the social housing? Where's the public housing? And so on. So that my larger view of the world overlaps very much with Brother Bernie's, but it makes a connection of guns and butter, foreign policy and domestic policy.
And you touched a little bit on like addressing the housing crisis and helping the unhoused. I know from just other interviews I've seen, you've talked about raising the minimum wage to a livable wage. Going forward with that kind of a policy, and then outside of that, is there anything else that you'd like to see done to help the housing crisis in America?
I mean, one is that we've got to be in contact with the people who are involved in working alongside the homeless. And we've got to listen closely to the voices of the homeless themselves. Now, they don't speak with one voice. But see, for me, democracy is not a matter of just the experts telling people X or Y. It's a matter of acknowledging we're all on the same human level. Some of us might have homes and others don't, but we're on the human level. We've all been thinking about things in our lives, and we all are concerned about creating conditions and social arrangements such that all of us can flower and flourish. Now, there's certain basic things that people want. You know, in Chicago, you don't want to be out in the cold when it's minus 15. I mean, we could all agree on that right away, right? But then the question becomes, well, what kind of larger social arrangements do we have such that it's not just a matter of packing them in the hotels, 3 in a room? That's what some cities are trying to do and say, oh, we look around and they're gone. Well, okay, they're gone, but where are they? What's really happening? What kind of lives are they living and so forth? If, for example, I mean, the fastest growing groups are the elderly and the children. Well, you got veterans in the Middle Ages. Then you've got some who are wrestling with mental illness. Well, there has to be programs that speak to each one of those groups. The elderly have their own specific needs that overlaps, but it's different than the youth, different than the veterans, different than those wrestling with mental health, those wrestling with certain kinds of substance abuse and addiction and so on. So if we had strong programs that speak to those kinds of issues alongside making sure that they have healthy housing where their lives can flourish, that to me is what a creative policy orientation looks like.
Awesome, thank you. And I know as well, having taught in prison for over 40 years, mass incarceration is a topic that you heavily weigh on in your campaign. Just wondering what policies specifically you would want to implement to decrease the incarceration rate in the U.S.
I would like our prisons to look like the prisons in Sweden and Finland. To be very honest with you, that's the first step. So that's an end to mass incarceration as we know it. That's an end to solitary confinement, which I believe is a form of torture, as it's presently practiced. And now, of course, they've got major programs in place to make sure that those who have committed certain kinds of crimes can undergo rehabilitation and have access to jobs. So that's something we can learn from other parts of the world. And I think we have to be very open to listening and learning from other parts of the world. So that for me would be the first step. How do we treat them humanely even when they're undergoing a certain kind of punishment? Now, some people argue, well, punishment as a whole needs to go. Well, if punishment takes the form, as in Finland and Sweden, of pulling people outside of society, but creating spaces where they're still able to gain access to education, they still treated humanely and so forth, that's still a kind of punishment. And that's what I'm talking about. That's very much what I'm talking about.
Awesome, thank you. Mm-hmm. And sorry, this switches gears just a little bit.
Sure.
Knowing that just a number of your opponents right now are relying heavily on like big donors to fuel their campaigns, how do you see your campaign lasting long term? Because I know you rely on donations from individual supporters. I attended your Zoom rally, so I saw a bit about how that works.
You were there. Oh, bless you, bless you. Yes, yes.
But yeah, just basing your campaign off of this kind of structure, funding wise, I'm just wondering how you see long term the campaign lasting with that.
Yeah, we just have to, put a faith in everyday people that they'll continually support us. Now, part of it is that large numbers of our fellow citizens, God bless them, they don't pay attention to elections until about 3 or 4 months before. There's just too much going on in their lives. And of course, so many of them lost faith and trust in politicians for very, very good reason. And so I'm very blessed to get as much money early on as I'm getting. But it's going to increase, I think, as we move on. As we get closer and closer, more and more people will actually take a real interest. Find out, who is this brother? This West? What is he talking about? What's this about? Martin Luther King and Fannie Lou Hamer and Rabbi Heschel and Edward Zahid. What is this stuff? Well, it's an academician at the end of the seminar. No, he's actually running for president. Oh, let's see. So I do have a tremendous trust in everyday people to sustain the campaign till the end.
And you talked a little bit about like how you know and recognize that a lot of people aren't really focusing on what's happening in the political world right now with the presidential election because of a lot of distrust in the systems. And I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to that and how you're going to draw in those people that might not be so trustworthy and might not be so inclined to come out to the polls.
Yeah, I'm trying to go where they are. I'm trying to go where they are. Now that takes money, of course. That's why we haven't had these mass rallies that a lot of people have been calling for, because those things cost a lot of money. They really do. And I'd rather spend money getting on the ballot in various states. But more and more people are exposed. And I must say, the media has been kind to me. Even the corporate media, CNN and company, they've had me on a number of times. And millions of people get a chance to watch that. And of course, social media as well. People keep track of you on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, and so on. You know that better than I. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess speaking to that, you're talking a little bit about, social media usage, kind of draws in youth vote. I'm wondering how you've been able to involve and excite youth voters. Because I mean, I myself, this is my first time voting in a presidential election, and I know a lot of others are as well, and a lot of Gen Z is very interested in politics, but there's a lot of the distrust there as well, just from seeing how things have unfolded in previous years. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so just wondering how you've been able to appeal to youth vote.
Well, you just do all you can to reach out and be yourself, be as for real and authentic as you can be honest with people, and hope that they can see a certain kind of honesty there. I think part of the problem these days is that most politicians are either tied to big money and therefore paid off and don't really want to speak certain truths. They just don't have the courage to do it. And they know they need the money for the election, the next election. Or they're true believers, but they're more and more true believers in looking at the world through the lens of the past. And this is where Trump and company come in. You see that they know the present has a rot there. And I agree with them. I think they're right. There is, as Shakespeare would say, something rotten in Denmark. There's something rotten in the United States. But there's something wonderful about the United States, too. And what's wonderful about it is what my campaign, I think, is about, which is to reintroduce America to the best of itself, which is the history of those who are part of struggles for truth and justice and love, struggles for poor and working people, struggles for critiques of foreign policies that demonize people around the world. America doesn't have to be the empire and every nation defers. No, we can be a decent, dignified nation among nations. Well, they say that's anti-American. No, that's not anti-American. We've got a rich anti-imperial history in America. It's just been overlooked and pushed to the side. William James, Mark Twain, W.B. Du Bois, Muriel Rukeyser. We can go on and on. Helen Keller. We can go on. Albert Einstein. Those folk are as American as the Ku Klux Klan. But we had to recognize we live in a country where both elements are there. And you have to be able to draw some very strong distinctions between it, and not think that somehow because you're standing for your conception of truth, justice, and love, that you're anti-American, as so many fellow citizens would want to say. That we have a right to be in this dialogue, in this election, in this context, and that's what, in the end, has made America really morally and spiritually great. Now, I know, Brother Trump wants to talk about military greatness and masculinist greatness. And so, well, no, I'm not giving up greatness, but I want moral and spiritual greatness. You see, that's what puts a smile on my face.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've talked a little bit about this, but just given the nature of the two-party system as well, people tend to be less likely to go out and vote for a third-party candidate. But I was wondering if you could speak to the importance of, number one, keeping your options open, and number two, why you chose to run as a third-party candidate.
Right. When I looked around and saw the various candidates running, it was clear that none of them represented the tradition and legacy that I'm a part of. I could support Bernie in 2016, 2020. He was running. We didn't agree on everything, but we agreed on enough. But this time around, Biden to Trump, that's it. You know, World War III with Biden, Civil War II with Trump. That's the choice between Civil War and World War. That's all. And we wonder why people are frustrated and desperate and apathetic. And I said, no, you've got to have some genuine alternative. The country is in such deep trouble. And when you're in deep trouble, you don't just come up with, well, I have a little less deep trouble as the alternative. People just completely turn away from politics, and that kind of reinforces a certain kind of fascism, certain kind of anti-democratic orientation or loss of faith in any democratic process. And at that point, then, the democratic experiment's over. It's a very, very sad affair.
Yeah. So, you've talked a little bit about the reasons why you are running as a third party candidate, but keeping your options open as a voter, paying attention to everything that's there for you, and paying attention to a third party candidate. It's about, like you've said, kind of just paying attention to the things that your campaign is running on, and paying attention to the things that affect the everyday citizen and how that is highlighted within your campaign.
Absolutely. And that's a matter of both their everyday life realities, school, job, healthcare, housing, but it also connects to what kind of people we want to be. So we look at Gaza. Is that the fair and just use of taxpayers' money to have U.S. bombs killing nearly 10,000 children in 2 months? Those are moral questions. And one of the goals of any politician ought to be not just winning the next election, but a caretaker of the moral character of the best of a nation. Now, a lot of people say that's just pure naivete. Everybody knows politics is in no way connected to morality. I would say that's not true. That's not true. Power certainly is fundamental and crucial in talking about politics. But if all you're talking about is economic and military power, and you're not talking about moral and spiritual powers, then you're going to slide down a slippery slope to fascism. And that's where we're headed if we don't provide a countervailing force against it. And that's what this campaign is about, a moment in a movement.
Absolutely. Thank you. And you spoke a lot about just things that you'd want people to know, of course. But if you could tell voters just one thing about this campaign and the importance of supporting you, what do you think that would be?
I think it would be legacy of Martin King. That's what it comes down to. Now, I could say legacy of John Coltrane, Love Supreme. And in saying that, we're not saying that any one of us are pure, pristine. We're not saying that any one of us don't have faults or foibles. We're all human beings, but our vision is one that embraces the humanity of each and every one of us, and it puts a primacy on poor and working people or any people who have been marginalized and pushed to the periphery.
you. And looking forward to what's next for your campaign. I know you've had a number of events in California, the Zoom
Right,
rally.
right.
Is there anything that you'd want people to be paying attention to, looking forward to, moving forward? Other than, of course, they can educate themselves on your campaign through websites and
Yeah, I would just go to CornelWest2024.com. Absolutely. But I just want to salute you, Sister Payton, because you have been just magnificent. Anahita, my wife, is singing your praises. So when we both get a chance to meet you and you say, who is this sister in Boston? Is it Emerson College?
yeah, Emerson College.
Yeah, the great Emerson College. Absolutely. There's a dear sister, Professor Corrigan.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Sister Corrigan, who teaches, what is she? She teaches a literature.
Okay.
Is it Maria Corrigan? But she's a professor there at Emerson. She's just in love with the Emerson students. You all are very artistic and brilliant and full of compassion and so forth. So that I do want to salute you, though. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time.